Welcome to another Tuesday, and from this point on it will be known as Tuesday 8, which is a bit of a spin on the of all of the ones that you sent me, and thank you for that. The middle-aged man, Tuesday in it, but from the Black Country it's got to be Tuesday 8. So welcome to Tuesday 8, and what I thought I'd do in this episode is just a bit of a montage of tips or things that I do to help me do, fell on a hole then, to help me complete kitchens a little bit easier, a little bit better, a little bit safer. You'll see the first one is going to be tall end cupboards, so I wouldn't say safer, especially from a health and safety point of view in terms of looking after your own back. But we're going to go through. It might not be as flowing as a normal video of ours, but like I say, I'm going to give you little tips. It may be that I just put a bit of a split screen in it or something, a bit of a swirly screen just to go from one tip to the next. But hopefully you enjoy this episode and you get something from it. So thank you again to the middle-aged man and everybody else that has helped name our new Tuesday video, Tuesday 8. First tip this week then, tall end cupboards. Now these ones here, you'd have to tune to the main episode, which would have been on last Friday, if you are actually tuning in on Tuesday. These have gone on a bit of a subframe at the bottom, you can see there, look, but we go into that within the episode and I'll talk about how I've fixed it and why I've put it on a frame, not legs. Now, I'm now looking at these two little cupboards now, and all I've done with this, first of all, is I have leaned it up against the wall to put the legs on the bottom. The back ones, I leant it forward and held onto it and then tapped them in by rocking it backwards and forwards on the legs. Not the safest way, it's better if you've got two people, but I've done this a few times and I'm confident. If it goes over, it's going to damage your cupboard, so I'll keep that in mind, but that's just a risk I'm willing to take for me to do it without hurting myself. So all I do now is just drop it onto its legs, give it a bit of a sit down like that. You can see it's a bit wobbly, but I just make sure that I've sort of got it so it's sitting flat, and because I know this screed is perfectly level. So if you remember from previous episodes, if you haven't already seen this whole build where we installed the liquid screen and everything, then have a look back on the channel and you can go from start to finish, where we did from footings right the way up to it being painted and the kitchen being finished. So have a look at that. So once you're at that point, you've got it against your other cupboard where you want it to be. Get yourself a bit of a mat because it hurts your knees. And then all you do, just very steady. Again, bear in mind that you don't want to damage the wall where there's not going to be any cupboards, because there's no wall cupboards this side at all. Let me just check I'm still in shot. Yes, I am. And all I do is I just pick it up, just lean it against the wall first at the back, and then I'll just pick it up nice and steady. Make sure it's against the wall, top and bottom. Give it a bit of a tap down. So in effect, I run it against the wall, give it a bit of a tap down. So I know then it's sitting on the legs, because what you don't want to do is get it in and push it over, because what will happen is your legs will do this. And regarding this, you have to make sure that your legs are upright, especially when you've got a big heavy cupboard like that. So my advice, again, within this same tip for tall end cupboards or tall cupboards, is have a look at your legs from this way and have a look at your legs from this way, and make sure they're not bent over, because I can guarantee to you, you'll try and level it, you'll get it level, you'll adjust one, and because they're not on the skunt, it'll just keep adjusting your level, and you'll keep running around your cupboard. So that's my again, that's what I'm going to say. I'm not going to call it a pro tip, because it probably isn't, is it? I'll let you decide that one. But if you just do that like I have, just nice and steady, just lift it up on the wall and drop it back down again, and then look at your legs. You won't end up chasing your tail, if you've got a tail, of course, and end up messing with your level. So that one there on the right hand side was a little bit bent over, so I'll just check all of those. The rest of them are all okay. So check that one up there, that one's not touching the floor, so that obviously wasn't as low as the others. And then what you can do is you can go underneath your cupboards and see if they are both flush, because what I've done prior to this one is this one has already been screwed and fixed and levelled to these two, which are already in level and fixed to the wall. That's a little bit easier. You can go underneath there now and make sure the bottoms are level. So I know now that this at the back has actually got to come down, because at the bottom these two gable ends aren't flush. So I'll just drop that down. It looks like the front's high. And if you do it sequentially, it's not as dangerous as if you try and do the back and front, because you could end up doing this and it could fall over. So be careful. Get your front level first, really. Level at the bottom, so you know that's right. And you can gauge it, so you can look at the legs, you can measure the legs. I've done that before, but because I put a timber on, I'd normally drop them on the back, measure it, put the legs on, and then drop it down. But because I've gone to a piece of 6x2, again, go back to the main episode to find out why I've done that. I've had to set these, just roughly gauge them and then drop it down. Now, despite all efforts, this kicks out a tiny little bit at the top on the wall, so I've had to cut a bit off that corner at the back of that first one and pull it out a touch. So I'm about 2 mil. I've got to make sure that I've got to pull this cupboard forward just to make this level a little bit now. So I'll just do that. So again, same method. I'll lift it up now, push it against that cupboard and then drop it down again, and I can line this up now. But that just looked like, yeah, it's pretty parallel now. So, and again, doing that, it allows the legs, if they are in tension, it allows them to spring back and go down level again. So that's not looking too bad now. So once I'm happy with that, which is going to come forward a touch by the looks of that, I'll get this set, and then we'll talk about screwing it in. And it sounds very simple, but it's not, because if you do it wrong, it looks absolutely dog toffee. So I'll finish this and we'll look at screwing it in. So I've got all my legs set. I'm happy with it. It's all plumb, level this way, plumb this way, plumb this way. I'm happy with that. I'll then get some clamps. I bought these Irwin quick clamps because they're just quick release, like that. However, if I'm honest, anything more than holding this together, I wouldn't bother. Wasting money. I'd go for something like this instead. Not specifically Irwin, it's just that they were on a good deal at the time, so I bought them. I'd go for something like this instead. Even though these are quite handy for one-handed operation, these do offer a hell of a lot more force than these. Again, you've got that quick release, so it's good again one-handed if you want to drop it on quick, but these ones, wouldn't bother wasting your money. Anyway, right then, I always pilot hole, I always do, with the Countersink on. Reason for that is twofold really, and let me just get this top screw in first, and then I can show you, because I can just, let me just make sure that making sure your faces are all level. Again, you know what, I'm going to keep confirming to myself, I don't know why I bother using them. I've clamped these two together, and because it's on legs and it's so high, these two faces here will sort of slip and slide away from each other, which then when you put your screw in or countersink can then mean that your faces aren't flush. Now that's important, because if they're not, to coin my phrase again, looks dog toffee. So if you clamp that, and then make sure these are lovely and flush, when you screw it, it will look better. Right. Where possible, any screws that you put in to clamp cupboards together, I would recommend that you put it behind your hinges. And that's because you don't see them then. But unfortunately, you are going to have to put screws into cupboards that you're going to see. There are different methods of covering them up. I've seen a few. Do I like them? Not really. This is why I stick to this method. I've used gold or brassy coloured screws, because you can get silver or brassy colour, can't you? In this instance, because it's a bit like an oaky, walnutty, dark, I think it's antique oak, I don't know, I'm not sure. I use gold on this. If it was like a grey or anything like that, then I'd use silver. And then you can't see them anyway, really, once you've put stuff in your cupboards. Unless I said, oh, there's the screw, you wouldn't walk past and go, look at the state of that. Another reason for that is because I do this, and I'll move the camera so you can see it. So you've clamped it, you make sure your faces are flush. I'll then try. I thought a putty cat. What I then try and do is make sure that my screws are the same distance in from the face. Again, no other reason than why not. I also then make them sort of equidistant as well. So I've put one at the bottom, I'll put one at the top, about the same distance down, same distance in, and then, excuse the sun glare, but I can't do nothing about the sun. And then I just countersink it. don't go mad on your countersink, especially if you use a decent screw like I do, because the decent screws have actually got like a serrated countersink on it. That if you can't really see that on camera very well, but can you see that? Oh, you can. See that? Like a serrated underside the countersink, and I use these. These are from a company called RJ Building Supplies, and you get them in big tubs. I've just paid £14.50 plus VAT for a big tub. They're on the screen now. These are the tubs you get. Depending what size screw you have, depends on how many screws you get per tub, but they're really, really good value for money and a great screw. I've used a lot of screws, and for the money, these are very good. So once you've done your countersink, and again, I'm going to do a little bit of tip as well, if I can, over here. Again, if you're watching, you're a chipper, you already know this, so you know, sucking eggs and all that, but this isn't necessarily for you. If you want to work at the size of your pilot hole, that's what you do, look. So the size of your pilot drill is the same size as the main shank of your screw, which is the metal part, forget the thread. The metal part, that's what size drill bit you use. Now this one is slightly smaller, for one reason is, I've just bossed mine down there, look, and I haven't got replacement, so this is the next size down. So you could go slightly bigger, look, but that's not too bad at all. That's what you do, that's your countersink. So there we are, that's something else I've just talked to you about. That's another tip, little one for you. And the reason you clamp it is when you're drilling, it tends to push these two apart, and then what happens is dust gets in between these two panels, and then you'll end up with a gap between your panels, which again, guess what? Looks dog toffee. So all I do then is, I then fix it in, and I don't smash it all the way in. I make sure it's just on the surface. Now I'll turn the volume off so you can't hear this rattling, because this is noisy, isn't it? Right, so you see me sort of pulsing the drill there, and I just make sure it's just on the surface. So if you don't do it too much, if you go down the surface, you end up seeing it looks quite nasty. How can I show you? Right, let's show you. For demonstration purposes, this isn't the best because of the countersink on the inbuilt countersink on the screw. It's actually better than it would be if it was a crap screw. So you can see that, can't you? That's flush with the top, and that looks nice and tidy. If you bury it, you end up seeing all the chipboard. But like I say, if you use a crap screw, again, this isn't the best example, that there would be all smashed all over the face, and it would all be chipping off. It looked terrible. A bit like that one, because that's just fired in with no pilot hole. See it, all the little bits are coming off. Again, like I say, that doesn't look untidy, but it doesn't look as good as that, does it? So that's what I'll do. I'll just repeat that. I'll put one about every 400 or so. However, if you think, actually, it could do a little bit tighter there on that joint, then just put another one in. Again, try and keep them equidistant, just so it looks tidy. But like I say, if you were to look at that now, would you know there's a screw in the middle of that shot? You wouldn't, would you? Unless I started going, oh, there it is, look there. You wouldn't see it because you haven't smashed it in and you haven't used a silver screw, whereas you would see it with a silver screw. And once you start putting stuff in these cupboards, like there's one there, look, that's behind the hinge, so you won't see that one. But the one at the back there, look, you're not going to see that because you're going to have everything in it. So there is like a sticky cover you can get on it as well. But again, if they're not exactly the same colour, it looks worse than it would do if you just put a screw like that and kept it nice and flush than it would if you put a cover on it and it's a different colour. There we are, that's my next tip. Right then, next bit of a pointer, bit of a tip on how I do things, and that is end panels. It's the same way for a wall cupboard, same way for my base unit. In this instance, it's a tall end panel, so probably the hardest one of all three. This wall is quite bad. I've got a 20mm gap at the bottom, but it sort of comes in and back out again like that. It is what it is. I just deal with it. I'll pull my cupboard out to suit, so there's a gap at the bottom of my cupboard, but that, you can't see that because I'm going to cover it with a panel now, so it doesn't matter. And likewise, at the end of the run, if I'm out a little bit on my cupboard there, again, no big deal, because they're having quartz anyway, so I haven't got to worry about worktops. If they've got to have a quartz about 10mm bigger, then that's it. Just to make sure it's right, because if you start cutting your cupboards in, then you've got to cut every single cupboard and you lose your depths on your cupboards, and you've got to be careful if you're doing that, because if you've got for example, a dishwasher in the run of your cupboards and you cut it back too far, or even if you've got a non-integrated cupboard and you've allowed a little bit more just to sit it back a bit further. You cut all your cupboards, you've got to cut all of them. So they'll all go back and you lose your face, your measurement. So just be careful if you're going to cut them. If you can cover it with an end panel, then do that instead, like I'm about to do now. So a couple of different things that you're going to need. First of all, make sure your cupboard's in level. I've put my cupboard in first and it's all fixed and solid. I've then got my panel. I've cut it to height. Now in this instance, I've gone 40mm above my top of my cupboard because I want the, I get it wrong every time, cornice and palmet, whichever one it is. I do it every time. I remember that and I forget. I'm sure they'll tell me anyway, but I just forget. So I want that to run into the side of it. So sort of like that, rather than being over the top and having to come in the corner. I've done it that way before. Depends what design I've got in my head, but that's what I've done to run it above. I've then, a couple of things I always have with me when I'm doing this, a little combination square. And I've also got some little wedges. You can see them there. There's a thick one and a thin one. And I bought loads of these, and these are ideal for this. So I've just tapped it into the bottom of this panel just to scoot it over a little bit. And again, it was on a little end of that. That's all it was. But at least it sits there now. Now, when you're messing around with these panels, don't leave it against a cupboard because it might take someone to knock it, or someone to open a door, or a window's open, a little gust of wind, and if it goes over and you damage it, you're in trouble because these aren't cheap. All I'll just do that. Little level, 6 foot level against the side. It hasn't got to carry no weight, it just stops it from ultimately starting to go, and then once it's gone, you know, you're in trouble. So don't leave it unattended. Set your combination square to the depth of your cupboard. Once it's level, so they're parallel with each other. That's important. If for some reason you are slightly out with your level on your cupboard, at least your panel's level, so everything else will be level. What you don't want is put your panel in level and your cupboard's a little bit out, end up with this like that or like that. That's what you don't want. So as long as it's parallel, if it is a little bit at level, it does matter, but it's not so bad. Once you've done that, all ready to go. I know it's 80mm now. Once I set that like that, it's 80mm against my cupboard. And I know from this little tool here, I'll talk about in a minute, that my panel is set 24mm forward of the face of my cupboard because I like it to sit to the face a little tiny bit further than the face of my door. I just think it looks a lot tidier. And then once it's all there now, I know then I've got to scribe this to the wall. 24mm, 80mm, I know I've got a 56mm packer. So I'll cut myself a 56mm packer now, 50mm, 6mm sort of shim to run down the wall now to scribe this. And all I will do, you haven't got to use green tape, it's expensive, but I've got rolls of it from decorating stuff and covering stuff in. So I'll use this. I'll put this at the 56mm mark all the way down and use it to scribe onto so I can see it, because you can't see it on the blue. And you don't want to be making mistakes using the wrong line. So get some of that on it as well. And then once you've done that, use combination of your circular saw or your track saw or whatever you want to do, or a jigsaw blade upside down so you can sort of follow it upside down. That's what I'm going to do first. So we'll get it scribed and hopefully it looks okay on camera. Let's have a look at that. And there it is fitted. Pretty good all the way down. I'll move it too quick so I can show you. A little bit of discrepancy just there, but I'm talking tiny. And that's fitted. It's all the way down to there. And then what I do is I use the little tool that I talked about earlier. I use this. Now, I'm not going to try and pronounce it. So get it in focus. There it is, look, that's what you're looking for. And all you could do is you just get this, flip that thing like that, and you just slide it backwards and forwards to where you want it. So if I get it on my 24mm, there, and then all I do then is just this shoulder goes against the panel, and you just flip it over like that, and you just sit it like that, and put it against your face, your cupboard, all the way down, to make sure it's parallel, which it is, which is why I've clamped it, because I checked it before I went on camera, as you do. And I'll just fix it then exactly the same way as the other one. Countersink first, and making sure I don't smash them all the way through the face so that it looks nice and flush. So now I'm really happy with that. I'll fix it top and bottom, take that bottom drawer out, top and bottom, one in the middle, and try and keep the fixings behind these drawers, other than the top obviously, can't help that. And that'll be tidy. And then next tip is just looking at wall cupboards, even though there's not really a tip to be had really. I'll just show you how I do it, and then feel free then to tell me if you do it any different. Now I'll discuss this on the main video, but I thought I'd show you about setting out base units. You need to make sure that you are running square, i.e. that sits against that, nice and flat, and you don't start running out with your cupboards. One way of doing that is to use a square, but if your wall is as bad as this one, like I've already showed you, then here's a method you can try. If you've got a laser, put your first cupboard in, make sure you're perfectly parallel, flat square to what you want to go from, which in this instance is my tall cupboard there, because I know that internal corner is perfectly square because we put that wall in, or Matt put that wall in. Get a bit of a block, set it to the same width like that, all the way across the ones you've already fixed. And this is more useful when you've got a gap like this. That's for the range cooker. So you do the same on that one, look. Same on that one, same on that one. So you get yourself a line. And then set your level up, your laser, if you've got one. And I urge you, this is the one that I'm giving away, but you know, it's about 130 quid. I've had it 3 years, worth every penny. So there we are, on your line there, look. And then run it across and make sure you're on your same line over there. And later on in the episode, when I start talking about fitting and other stuff over there, including wall cupboards, I will talk about those orange things down there, and they're called space plugs. We're now going to move on to base units and wall cupboard setting out. Always comes with a plan. We've done all the one behind you, behind the camera anyway. That's all set out. So I've got my heights of my wall cupboards, I've got the heights of my base units, all ready to go and all set out. So what I've done now is already I've marked on my wall 1000 base, 500 base, and I've got the fridge housing. So I've marked that on the wall. I've come the same distance off this corner scribe as I've done that side, and I'll be doing scribing in this episode as well if you haven't done that before. How to scribe your panels into walls that aren't necessarily flat. I've already gone into it a little bit when we did tall end panels, so it's sort of similar, but there's a different tool that I use, so you'll be interested in that as well. So stick around for that. I've done all that. I've then marked on a level line using my laser. I'll put it on top of the base unit over there. And with the laser I've got, we've already talked about last week, what I've done is I put it on top, and I know when I sit it on top of something, it's 110mm to the laser. So I sat it on the base unit over there. I've then measured up 110mm, and I'm exactly 880 off the floor, which is what I am over there, because we know that this flow screed is 100% flat, which is always good to measure off. I've done that, and then I'm now going to work out the height of my wall cupboard. So what I've done is, you won't see it because I'm not going to keep turning the camera around. I've now put my laser inside the cupboard, wall cupboard over there, and it's 130mm from the top of the laser, because the laser's about 1 mil thick, so I'll keep that in mind when you're setting out. Doesn't seem a lot, but it will if you set it out and it goes in a run, it will, you know, decrease or increase. It's 130mm to top of laser, bottom of cupboard to top of laser. So what I'll do now, I know that this is my position of my first 1000 base. So rather than go in the corner so I can't see my level line, I'm just going to come off this now. Get that on my mark. And if you're trying to move a level on your own, if you put your pencil on your line, it just means your bottom of your level can't keep moving. Because unfortunately, it's a bit of a pain when you're trying to do it on your own. When you're trying to get a level line. I could do this with my laser, but to be honest, I've got it set up to do that over there, so I can't be bothered. So once you've got your level, your upright line, level's a bit dusty. Check your line, yep, that's right there. And then I know I'm 130mm, as I said, over there lower, so I'll just do a line like that. I don't want to do too much because again, it's already been sort of at its first coat of paint, so I don't want to cause too many lines on the wall for the painter, because I know him personally and I upset him. So that's my line now. I'm then going to measure 130mm down. Now, a bit of a tip for you, when you're measuring with a tape measure, it's called burning 100 or burning whatever. You hear people say it on YouTube all the time. I think there's Americans say burning it. Anyway, I'll do as well. When you're trying to measure something 130mm, I always burn 100, which means forget about 100. So in effect, you do it 230. I hope that makes sense. So I set my laser to the top, 230, and then mark at the 100mm point instead, rather than trying to, especially when you're doing it this way, it's okay, but when it's quite tight, you could have a bit of a discrepancy. So burn 100, stick it on 230, 330, whatever, but just remember where you've got to come down to. I hope I'm not confusing you. So I know now that that is my mark. Get my little level. And this is all about setting out your base units to suit your wall cupboards first, because you want them to be all in line as you look up the wall. So again, set to my level. And I know that little mark there, tick mark there, is the bottom of my wall cupboard now. So I know, and I could just like leave my laser set up, but I need to put my brackets on the wall. And I know my brackets in this instance are to the holes anyway. And I'll show you what I mean about the holes. The holes in the brackets that go on the wall are 60mm to centre from the top of my wall cupboard. So I'll set that out, and then I'll show you what I mean about the wall cupboard and show you a little bit of a tip that I use to make sure I put my brackets in the right place, because they sit inside the gables of the wall cupboards. And I've done it before myself. I've set my 900 out, put my brackets on the wall, and haven't come in the thickness of the gable either side. So we'll have a look at that now and how I do that. Okay, so I've established now the width of my cupboard on the wall, up the top. I've established my height, and then I've established the 60mm down that's required for my brackets. Now, I was going to get some brackets out. Where are they? There they are, in the bottom of this cupboard. Right, so I can show you now what I mean about the 60mm down. Right, if you look on the screen now, you can see how I established my 60mm and why it's 60mm. But this is looking at the brackets now. That's them there, look. If you can see that on the screen. I can't see myself. There we are, look. See, 60mm is to the centre of those top two holes. So to here. As I said to you, they go inside the side gables, as you've just seen me on the little shot on the screen there. So I've got my outside marks now, my 900s. I'll then get a piece of offcut like that. I'll put it on my level line like that, and I'll mark it on the wall, which then gives me two lines. To then make sure I do it the right one, I put a little bit of a cross. On the wall there is my top mark, there. And then 60mm down is that mark there. So, I mean, you can do it by eye, or you can get a level on it, but to be honest, I'll do it by eye, because you can line up the side, because if you put that line on level, you can line the bracket up, and then just put that, I'd allow a millimetre in from the line we've just scribed, because so when the cupboard goes on, that is a millimetre in, so it's not catching. If you do it too tight, you'll struggle. And then eye it all up like that, and then I'll just draw around it like that. Now you can get these in big long lengths, which is good if you're using stud work maybe, but I don't mind using these if I'm honest, and hopefully I'll drop lucky with cables and things. That's the only good thing about using long strips, is if you've got cables everywhere in the walls, you're not set to these holes, because you'd have multiple holes to drill into. Only downside is you don't have to stop chopping the backs out your cupboards, but there we are, not to worry. So I'll do it this side as well. And again, I've missed my cables, thank goodness. Now, one thing you need to be aware of is that Sparkies will say they've got a 150 zone, and I don't know whether plumbers use the same rule. So plumbers tell me, gas engineers, do you use a 150 zone, which means to locate cables and what, either vertically, like that, horizontally only, but don't always presume. But 150 down from the ceiling, 150 in from the corners, they can also put cables and pipes. They don't make it easy for us, do they? So I'd be mindful of that. Now I know where everything is in here, because it's all been done by us, so I know. Plus the fact that when we just set things out, I just sort of say, well, you know, keep that in mind, because I've got to put cupboards up that corner, which is why I've always said, and I will continue to say, working with a team of people all the time is beneficial. Same people, because they work with you, not against you. Other trades will come in, do the job and just go home, they don't care. But when you work together, everyone thinks of each other, which is good. Now I've got those on the wall, I can now drill my holes and plug and screw these onto the wall. Now if it's a solid wall like this is, because it's wet plastered, not dabbed, I'll just use, generally use a number 10 screw and a 60mm number 10 screw, 60mm, and a brown plug, and fix this on. 3 of these is perfectly fine. Depending on what the fixings are like, I may even put one at the bottom. Now over there, they're solid. I am going to put one at the bottom as well though, so when you saw me last week putting the wall cupboards on and putting a packer behind because the wall was that far out, I'll have to do the same on this one. We shall see. I'll just drill through my packers and put a screw in the bottom as well, just to take a bit more weight. But because they're such big cupboards, they can put a lot more in them, so I'm going to be mindful of that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to continue all the way through, mark these all the way through because I've got wall cupboards all the way across here until we get the base end panel out or top end panel over there, and drill all my holes at the same time. Because I'm trying to film 2 videos at the same time, maybe it's a step too far. I've gone a little bit further on than what I thought I talked about. When I've checked back on the footage, my apologies, I believe my ear protection is scratching on my microphone a little bit, so I've took it off now. I apologise for that if you've caught it, especially wearing headphones. So I drilled all my brackets on the wall, got them all level, and then what I've done, I hung all my wall cupboards on, and then because I've got my laser set over there, I know that when I measure it, where's my tape gone? Here it is. I know that when I measure it from the bottom of my cupboard over there, because that's already set as you know, to the, again, picking the top or bottom of the laser, and it's bottom of the laser over there, I'm 130mm. So I've got all these set to 130mm now. Now you may notice, or you might not, that one's further forward because in that corner, Matt had to do some bonding and it's all that flat and level. I'm gonna have to pick all of these cupboards out. I've all got to come forward by, blimey, 10mm, believe it or not. It's horrendous, isn't it? So I'm gonna have to get this one in nice and level, get that one fixed, and then pull these out, and I might fix them together then, and then pack and put my package in and glue it as I go. I think that might be the best option, rather than trying to do it separately, because if you do it separately you can start to do this with your cupboards. That's why I've decided to put them on at the same time. I can also then, like I said, just screw them together, maintain this gap to 25mm, which is the same as the Scribe over there, so at least it looks uniform. And all these are nice and tidy now, and I have crept a little bit that way with my marks, so maybe when I was marking I was a millimetre out or so. So my marks on the floor are pretty good. I've still got plenty of room, so I can afford to creep these back over. But all I will do now when I do my base units, once I've got these fixed in place, is I just level down from either end. Doesn't really matter. Go from that end, probably it's easier. Level down, and then start my base cupboard from there level and work my way this way. So at least I know that when you put the doors on, they all look in line, which is what the aim really with your kitchen. You haven't always got matching doors top and bottom. For example, here I've got a 600 because it's got a microwave in the wall cupboard and a 400 there, but at the bottom I've got a 1000 base, so it won't look exactly the same. But you know, where you can, try and make them look the same. Right, I thought I'd do another little tip for you. I've got this panel fixed now. That's all as it should be. I haven't checked it for plumb actually, but it should be because it's fixed the cupboard that's level. Yes, lovely. So once you've established that, you've now got to get your opening. It doesn't matter whether there was the wall there or whether against the wall cell, whether it's in an island like this is. For a dishwasher or a washing machine or integrated appliance, it's got to be 600 space. So I'll get myself some timber, 600. I'll then put it on the floor and strike a line with a square. So I put my square in somewhere. Put a square there like that to make sure it's sitting parallel like that, because if it's out a square, remember diagonal timber is going to be longer, so your opening won't be right. Then what I'll do, because I can screw into the top of my panel, I'll then get myself some more timber, but bigger than what I want, and I'll screw it into the top of there, and I'll screw it into the top of the one that comes down here like that. And then what that done then is it maintains my 600, because remember it's a panel that's just freestanding, it's just flopping everywhere. So until I get my decor end panel on the back and get this corner fixed in, because I can just pocket screw it in this corner because I can get to it, it's difficult to hold this upright. And what you don't want to do is get it fixed and get it templated and then realise that it's sort of gone over like that, because once you've templated your worktop, that's you done, you're finished, in more ways than one. So yeah, so I'll just do that. I also cut a third one just to, you know, make sure that when I put these timbers across, I'll put that in there like that, screw it down, and I can pull this out, move it to the front, and put my next one on. Make sure they're all the same length, obviously, and that just gives you your opening to make sure that when you come to put your dishwasher in, straight in, no problem at all. I've done it once when I measured, without doing this, I measured 600, but I measured outside dimension. So I measured width of a cupboard 600, not internal dimension. Wanted to come to put dishwashing and went like that. Oh, that was half a day of work I'll never forget. But luckily I got wiggle room because it was next to a corner cupboard and I could move it into the corner. And luckily I'd got quite a big scribe in the corner so I could just reduce it. Lest I'd have been in a world of pain. So there we are. Hope you like that tip. I'll crack on now and get this panel fitted and get my decorative panel on the back. So in my kitchen now, I'm moving on to doors and hinges. Now this is a little bit of a tip, but not a tip really. I don't know what to say about it really. But when you put your clips on and you come to doors and hinges, Chase Kitchens always send a big box full like that. So I've got all these out, got my clips ready. Oops. Got all my clips in one place, and then I got on my Milwaukee trolley, which you would have seen on the main episode. Sat on it and spun round and kept myself all, so I wasn't bending over. Think of your back as well. And then I've got all the clips on all at the same time. That's a bit of a spare. But what is a little bit of a tip is if you are going to do this yourself and you're using a specific hinge, can't even hold on to it. There's a way to put them on. They're the wrong way and the right way. So if I get close to the camera, not sure if you can see centre camera, but there's an arrow which points towards the hinge. That's what the arrow's for. And it clips into the back there. Like, see that little bit of a clip there? So that bar, that one there, goes into that slot on the back of the hinge. So it goes in like that. And then when you've got your door on, it just clips in like that. And to get it off, you just under that little bit of a tab at the back there, look. Under that tab. I mean, this is easy when it's all fixed to the door and the cupboard, and it just unclips. Old-fashioned hinges used to have to unscrew everything, but you don't anymore. They just clip on and off. So just keep that in mind and put it on the right way. First of all, my apologies. I went to do a bit of a, I don't know if I call it tips or not. Again, like I said before, I don't know if it's tips or tricks, just something that makes it a little bit easy for you. That's what I'm trying to do really with this video. Make things a little bit easy for someone that doesn't do it all the time or has never done it before. Cornice and pelmet. We've already joked that I keep forgetting which one's which. Cornice, I think, is the top one, and pelmet's the bottom one because that's pelmet. So, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Top and bottom of a cupboard. This is a square section, and you can see it sort of comes like that. I think it's something like 35 by 60, something like that, I think, but that's irrelevant at this point in time. Now, as you can see, I've put both mine in like that on the top and bottom of the cupboard, so when the door sits in there, a bit like the panels, I've got a little bit of a gap there like that, a bit of a shadow gap all the way around, and it sort of frames the doors. That's what I like to go for. Now, if you are going to put these, the top one goes on like that anyway, that's how it goes on, flat. The bottom one, however, depending whether you're going to put under cupboard lights on and what size lights you're going to put on. Now, it used to be a fact that with the little tiny strip lights, you have to put it on that way because you couldn't cover them behind it, if you like, when you fix it to there. But with these small LEDs now, and going on like that, you can put it on that way, and the customer wanted it on this way, so just went and asked them. If you do put it on this way, however, you've got two options. You can either set it back to level with your cupboard, which means you haven't got a nice sort of overhang and framed around your doors because you haven't got anything to fix to. But what you can do is you can get these little blocks, screw blocks, screw it to the face of your cupboard, and I'm sure I didn't show you before, I apologise, like that. Screw these to your cupboard and then screw that in. So in effect, that bit then, imagine that's your face of your cupboard like that, and you can sit it forward like that, but then you've only got that thin little margin there, look, so not a fan really, but you can do that if you wanted to. That way is nicer, and you can screw it in from the top or bottom. I always go inside the cupboard because I trying to get in and up under there, whatever. So there we are. You have to ignore the fact that I've got no panels in here because you may or may not remember I've had to order these special, these end ones, and they're taking a little bit longer than the doors and the standard panels come because they're 900 high. Hence they're not on yet, because I'd always recommend putting the panels on first and then putting these on. You would have seen on the main video I did put little bits of wood on the side. Now, even though I know it's a 900 cupboard, what I like to do, and it's a little bit of a trick, I like to put it on like that so I can fit it and then friction fit it in between the panels, which then holds it then. And I haven't got to worry about trying to hold it or put clamps and things on and keep messing with it. If I push it in friction fit, then at least you know, it's there, and I can take these off after. And I also know that these are nice and flush then, and even if it is a little bit discrepancy, with when I do put the panels on, I'm not going to have any problems with the gaps. So I thought I'd move on to scribes. So what I mean by scribe is where you put a piece of trim against a wall to cover up, in this instance, a hole. And what I want to achieve is that, where it sits flush with the face of the door. So this is what I do first. I get myself 2 pieces of trim that are the right height, in this instance 720, and I use one of these, a U-Scribe jig. So the first step you've got to do when you're using one of those is get your full width of that first. So this will become clear as I start to do it. So let me just get my tape ready. So from the wall to there. So that one measures 40, just over. That measures the same. That measures that. I'm not surprised because this wall is the one we put in nice and flat. So, so I'm going to go slightly less and go for 39mm. So I need to cut my first piece of trim, which is the one that's going to go on the face, at 39mm wide. And then I'll also make sure that my piece that's going at the back, to join it all together to fix it to the cupboard, because it's an L shape, that is fixed to a piece that goes down the back, and then that allows you to screw it together. So I'll cut that at 39mm first, and then I'll show you what I do with those U-Scribes. So the reason for cutting it 39mm is because when that goes on there like that, it's sort of, you can use the clips that I'll show you in a minute to clip it onto the edge of the cupboard, or this edge of the cupboard down there. So, and I don't want it too long that it sticks past, because that won't work then. So there's a little bit of a cupboard showing there, look. That'll go in there like that. Once it's scribed, I'll cut that back in. So I'll show you how to put these, now that's cut, I like to put these U-Scribe things on, and then I'll tell you how I use it from that point. So these U-Scribe jigs come in different sizes. This is the 18mm version, because the stuff that I use is generally 18mm. I don't generally use anything different to that, so I've only got one set, but you can get 3 different sets, I think. 16mm, I think you can get 22mm. Anyway, you can. U-Scribe jig, they are good, very useful. That's my piece now. That's as I want it, like that. That's the edge that I want to be able to see. That's my best side there, because you can see I've cut it there. I can see a break out there. So the way these go on now is, you imagine that bit now, that's your cupboard behind there, look like that. And you need to click this on. So if you get a bit stuck which way to put it on, just get a little bit of scrap like that, and that's how it goes on that, look. Fits on like that. So I know now that on the back of this piece, I'll screw that onto there, all the way down. And just make that you put it down low enough that it doesn't interfere with the top or the bottom of the cupboard. Put these on there like that. And then you clip it onto your cupboard like that. And then you run your piece of timber down there. So let's do that. I'll come over to the cupboard now then, and that'll just go on there like that. Now it doesn't have to be the same size. I could have done 5mm short, it wouldn't matter. So if you've got some stuff left that's 5mm smaller, 10mm smaller, it doesn't matter. I'll just do it this size because it's easy just to start cut. Right, what this does now is, this clips onto the cupboard, and what it does now, it sets this then to a point where, as long as you use the same material, which is 18mm, which is the same thickness as this, as my carcass, this will now, once I cut it, set that in to go in the gap at the side, even though I'm going to pull it forward, which again, I'll show you how I do that in a minute. So what I'll do then is, you just get your timber. Again, don't do a big piece like I talked about the big panels. Do a smallish piece so it doesn't go over any undulation. Now I know this is perfectly flat, so I'm just using this as an example. I could just measure this and cut it on the saw, because I don't need to do this, but this is just the easiest way to show you, rather than show you on a big one, because this is a bit visually a bit better. So you put that against there tight, run it all the way down, and you make a mark on the front of there. And I've already talked about, if you want to use tape on the front to make it simpler, so you can see it, then do that. So once you've marked it all the way down, you just clip it off, take these off the back, and then you cut that to suit. So come in a bit closer, just so you can see this next stage. And the next stage is just fixing your piece of trim And again, try and stick to the same colour as your cupboard, which the offcuts that you get off your plinth or your panels. And I'll just screw that in there like that, nice and flush with that one. Doesn't matter about that gap there because it'll be covered in a minute. That's the piece that goes onto, or you glue your small piece onto now. Now, you could have done this, I could have done this beforehand, but there's any slight discrepancy in your cut and you need to push it tighter to the wall. If you screw it to this first and it's all nice and square and flush, then to be perfectly honest, you're stuck then because it's already glued. So what I tend to do is, I've got my piece over here, the piece that we cut earlier, look. And what I'll do now is I'll use some of the, there it is there, look, actually, on the floor. That stuff, the 2-part glue. And I'll stick some of that on the back of there, spray it, and then stick that onto that trim like that. And again, it's all nice and tight to my wall. And as you can see, there is a slight discrepancy at the top, so if I'd have actually fixed that to that, I'd have been off the wall slightly. But when I put my door on, and there's a gap around the door anyway, you won't see what is potentially like a millimetre discrepancy. So that's how I do it. So I hope that's helped if you're doing yours. Any questions, stick it in the comments and I'll try and answer it for you. Okay, so I've stuck it on with the glue then and put the door back on. That's it. That's what I like, nice and flush with the door. Nice and tidy like that. There we are. Another one done. Move on to the rest ones now. Get those done and then I can start doing the appliance door here and then put the drawer fronts on. So I thought I'd finish off this bit of a Tuesday video with door adjustment because they can be a bit of a pain. So what I've done is I've made sure these are massively out compared to what they would be. But it may just be that the hinge you've got has just, I don't know, just come not fully adjusted. I don't know, because generally you put them on and a little tweak and you're done. So this is a standard cupboard. So what I'm going to show you now is a couple of things. You have got 2 adjustments on these. You've got the back one, which is to make the door go in and out, and the front one, which is to make the door to go left and right when it's closed. Now you can see that one there, look, see the way that's bouncing, like that. That is generally down to the in and out adjustment. So if you can see that gap, and I've over-exaggerated it, see the way it's touching, but at the top, it's not touching, see? The door's not touching the cupboard. So all you need to do is do it gradually, bit by bit. Put your normal screwdriver in there and just move it out a little bit, like that. First of all, check that it closes, which it does now. And then have a look at your gap and try and get that as even as you can. You can still go a little tiny bit more, but another check you can do once it closes, if it does this, look, if you can hear that, it means it's touching the bottom of the cup, the frame, touching that, but not touching the top, which means if you pull that out more, it'll push the top of the door in a bit more and it'll stop that bouncing. So and a lot of this could be if you haven't put your cupboard on parallel as well, is when you put your cupboard on, you need to make sure that your cupboard isn't twisted and it's plumb. So you can see now that that gap all the way up is pretty good, all the way up. And that's no longer bouncing. The next one then, if you can see that one, see how big that gap is there? And how big the gap is up there, look. Now, if you've got against a cupboard, make sure this one's all done first, and it's parallel at the top and bottom, left and right, to that one first, because it's, obviously this is the one you're going to see, even though I've got to put a panel in there yet. And then all you do is this one at the front. You just adjust that in and out, so in this instance, it's anti-clockwise to make the door go this way towards me, which is what I want to do. And you have a look at that. No, not quite there yet. You can also check on the edge of your cupboard. You can still see that it's a bigger gap at the top, it's at the bottom. So I need to do that as well. A bit more. Right, that's a lot better now. In fact, I can actually go back in a little touch. Yes, it can. I can go back in. Again, just it's all about just tweaking a little bit, just tiny little tweak. And they will move over time anyway, so this is something that you just keep in mind when you're setting out your cupboard. Then once they've been in 12 months, just to tweak them a little bit. So there we are. I can probably, looking at that, I can probably tweak that one a little tiny bit at the top, because that gap is still a little bit tighter at the top than the bottom. But that's pretty parallel. However, my door, if you could see, is still slightly lower there, look, so I reckon if I was to tweak this one in a little bit, I reckon that'll get that now. It has indeed. That's got that. There we are. So that's that one. The next one then, I thought I'd show you the big cupboards. These are a bit more difficult because you've, especially this one, because it's got these different hinges on, look. Even though you've still got the screws to put it in, but they're all hidden in there, look. Again, the back one is to make it in and out, and the front one is to make it go left and right. And again, I've over-exaggerated this, just to give you a bit more example. So you can see that doesn't look too bad. That gap across there looks pretty good. However, you can see that that cupboard is sticking out, look. But the thing is that you don't realise is when you open it, can you see that now? Now, that gap's now bigger than the back one, and that's sticking further forward, and that is because your cupboard, your door is sticking out too much. So again, you go to your back one, adjustment, keep an eye on it, get it to where you want to be. And again, I've took this off. You can see the screws already been in there. Look, I've took this out just to show you. And once you've done that, what you do then, you just close it and try it. That cupboard is now level, flush. When it's closed, it looks good. When it's open, we'll probably go in a bit more, you know. A bit more. If you open and close it a couple of times, it just lets the hinge bed in. So that looks good now. I'm happy with that. And when it closes, that looks good as well. And then you screw them together, and that'll move as one then, because if you don't make sure that you've got this adjustment on properly, it'll bind, because what will happen is when you try and open this door, because your doors aren't set parallel like this, that door will try and push down, or that one will try and push up if it's not parallel. Again, you could get a tape measure and you could measure off here if you wanted to, to do that, but I think just doing that by eye is the best way to do it. So I'll put my screw back in there, and that's it done. Okay, to finish us off, I think, for this series, this episode, shall I say, I'm going to show you just very quickly how you adjust drawers, or even if you've moved into a new house and you've got these type of drawers, I mean these ones, and you're not happy with how they sit, or whether they're not quite sitting right, or whatever. So I thought I'd give you a quick preview of how you do it. Okay, so first of all, on the side here, look, there's a little thing that you take off, just clips back on. And in there, you're going to see three things. You're going to see that one there, on the right-hand side. That makes this drawer front go up and down. That one that you can just about see there, you can just about see the bottom of it, the bottom cross of the posi. That is to actually take the drawer front off. I'll show you that in a minute. And that one there does give you a little bit of movement with the drawer front left and right. So it goes without saying, put your screwdriver in there and you turn that, and that one, this drawer front will go up and down if you think that your margins on your drawers aren't right, which they are, because I've already adjusted them. Now this one, let me just see if I can set you down here somewhere. Let's do it on the bottom drawer instead. I'll try and show you, because this is a difficult one. Let me put you down first. Okay, this is a bit of a faff. Right, you'll see that you have to get your screwdriver in there, look, and you have to sort of prise a little bit of a lever up. Then if you saw that, and if I take the screwdriver, you see the lever, so the little metal drop down. Put your screwdriver in there, leave it up a little bit, put it in there, and all you do is give it a turn, and it just, see it coming off. I'll do that because I've got this in place now. But this is also, if you pull that little collar back there, look, that orange thing there makes this drawer front do that. So if for some reason, let me close the drawer and show you, because again I've adjusted all these already, so obviously I'm not gonna do it. If for some reason, a bit like when I showed you about the doors, if they bounce, if you do that and it pushes in, or you can see that you can see the top of that one when you look down, it may be that drawer front is sitting like that. Or if it's like that, if you find it doesn't sit right when you look down the face of the drawers. And that's how you adjust them. It is quite simple, but you shouldn't have to take the drawer front off as such, but that's how you make the moving that back, twisting that backs and forwards, and then these ones here, move it. Right then, so that's that. The very last thing I want to show you is if you are doing door handles yourself, and this is for tradespeople as well as it is DIY, that there, I can say, is quite possibly the best handle jig I've had. All I normally do, let me get you a handle so I can show you. Oh, there's one out of the packet there we are, that'll help me. All I normally do, you got the 0 there, look. So you know, if you set your first one to 0, wherever you move this, because it's inches and millimetres, wherever you move this, look, this one then gives you your centre. Now, that one's set, as you can see, to 150, which meant that from the edge of the door front to the centre of that screw is 150, which is what I wanted. And all I do to make sure that these centres are right is I then turn this over, and I'll just get my pins that for your handles, put one in there, fix that onto there like that, fix that one on as well, move it over, and then hold that in place and tighten this down. And all I've then got to do, like that one there, I adjusted this to get myself centre of that. You just sit that on top of your drawer front like that. Hard to show you now. Like that, as you can see, like that, look. And then that tab then goes on the edge of your drawer, and you just steadily drill your holes through there. You get the right size drill bit, so you get like a good pilot hole in there. Now, the only thing I will find is if you think you may have moved a little bit, because the head of the screw, you can allow to drill your hole a little bit bigger, so you can get a little bit of up and down movement on your handle. So if you drill your hole, like that one there is exactly the same diameter as that, so you can't get any movement on that, but I'm confident that mine are straight. If you think you've gone off a little bit for some reason, drill your hole one size bigger, and you can do this with the handles on your drawer front because the hole's a little bit bigger. That's the only thing I would say if your handles aren't going on straight. Elongate your hole slightly, because as you can see, you can do it a little bit. Good cut 2 sizes maybe on this one in particular, and definitely on the knobs you can move them up and down. But just be mindful then of what it looks like on the inside. So there we are. This is all complete and ready for the templating on Thursday. I really hope, even if just 1 or 2 of you have got something from this video. I don't know if it'll be a popular video. It probably won't be. It's on a Tuesday, and it's very specific, isn't it, as to what the video's about, which generally means that they don't do very well. But as I just said, I love doing what I do. I like showing people what I do and how I do it. And if it helps 1 or 2 people, just to fit handles on, or to adjust a drawer front or a door, or to put a cupboard in, then that's great. I'm happy about that. Thank you very much for watching this video. Stay tuned for the up and coming Friday videos, which I think is going to be a new job this coming Friday, which is if you've seen the main episode last week, you would have already seen us at another job putting steels in. So that was a sneaky preview for you. So thanks for watching this video, and we will see you on the next one.